I am so much more excited to talk about the 2025 running back class than I was in the 2024 class. That class sucked compared to this class we've got coming up here, so I'm excited to get into this video ranking the top backs in 2025 Dynasty Fantasy Football rookie class. But make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support, because this still is a new Dynasty channel here where I'll be posting the majority of the offseason. So getting into our first tier right here, of course, everybody knows the name. If you know Dynasty Fantasy Football, this is likely going to be the #1 overall pick in Dynasty rookie drafts, unless maybe you're in a super flex. But even then, Ashton Jinnie out of Boise State is likely going to be the #1 guy for everybody. I mean, this guy obviously has ridiculous numbers, right? We don't even need to discuss it, but of course we're going to respect the name. 2,600 rushing yards in 2024 on 374 carries. That is 7 yards per carry. That's an absolutely outrageous number. It led to him breaking Barry Sanders' record. On top of that, gets 138 yards receiving. The guy was ridiculous. It's not even worth talking about how ridiculous he was. He's a junior, obviously, coming out. Last year, even, he had a really good year. 1,347 rushing yards at 6.1 yards per carry. Like, he improved so much and with so much more volume in his junior year. It's actually ridiculous. And really, there's a lot of reasons why. Like, Ashton Jinnie, he's got fantastic vision. The guy's great with the ball in his hands. Just finds space and creates space for himself. Very similar to what Barry Sanders used to do back in the day. Now, the only problem I could see with Ashton Jinnie is that he is a little bit smaller than you'd like him to be. Like, he is definitely a 5'9" guy. I would absolutely believe if that's the size that he comes out at in the draft. But he also is really built well, so I'm not ultimately too particularly concerned about his lack of height. I'd be much more concerned with it if he was like sub 200 pounds coming into the draft. That would concern me just a little bit. But the physicality that he possesses, it's obviously somebody that, you know, is not typically of that size. Like, he's actually a pretty physical runner, so I don't worry about the physicality of Ashton Jinnie at all. What Ashton Jinnie really strikes me of is just a guy who's going to be like a 20-plus opportunity guy in the NFL. I don't know where he's going to go. I think he's the only running back, though, with a shot of getting into the first round. I think the only thing that maybe I could identify as a weakness is the fact that I do think he has like breakaway speed, but he doesn't strike me as like a Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall type of home run hitter. Like, that's not exactly Ashton Jinnie's game, but I do think that he's got plenty of breakaway speed. There's just not much you can fault the guy on. I'm trying to find things where maybe it's not the best thing to identify, but he's ultimately just the best back in this entire class. And at #2, down in his own tier for sure, Omari Hampton out of North Carolina, I think is a great prospect as well. 6 foot, 220 pounds. This guy is the type of guy that I personally like to target, because what we've seen about Omari Hampton in his film breakdown is that this guy is super patient with the ball in his hands. He's got a Le'Veon Bell type of running style. He waits for holes to open up. He's big enough to be able to handle contact and handle the majority of the workload as well. So none of those things concern me at all. I mean, he had 2+ years with 250+ carries, 1,600 yards his junior year, and 15 touchdowns in both his sophomore and junior year. This guy's a stud, and he does have great pass catching upside as well, which again makes me feel very confident in Omari to be able to sustain production at the NFL level. Now, what really gives me confidence, particularly in Omari Hampton at the NFL level, is that size combined with that running style. I do think that NFL teams will really like this guy when they watch him on film and see what he did for 2 years straight as the #1 guy in North Carolina, because this guy absolutely has that type of running style that will fit very well into multiple different running schemes across the league. Whether he goes to a team that does more of the outside the tackles running scheme or between the tackles running scheme, this guy I think is absolute defining quality is how brutal he is running the ball. This guy is a brutal runner, man. So I just have a lot of good things to say about Omari Hampton. Now, I wouldn't say that he necessarily has like breakaway speed or anything like that. He's not slow, but he's definitely not the fastest guy on the field every time he steps on the field. And I do think that's probably the only problem. But as far as I'm concerned, like, there's an outside chance that he's a first-round guy. I doubt that he is, but I do think there's an outside chance. But as far as being the second running back off the board, I think that's kind of looking like the case right now. And he's somebody that I could immediately see whoever gets drafted to, whether it's the Bears that draft him or whether it's the Washington Commanders, I don't know who's going to take him, but I do think that he's absolutely a guy that's going to be ready to go week 1 of the NFL 2025 season, and someone that I'd probably draft on Underdog in a best ball tournament because I think the returns on this guy in his first year are going to be really good. And speaking of Underdog, I won $15,000 on Underdog this year, so I obviously love Underdog, and it's so great that they're giving us a sweat-free pick with Patrick Mahomes in the divisional round of our NFL playoffs, because Patrick Mahomes' sweat-free projection right now is 0.5 total yards on Underdog. So you hit the higher on this one, you're going to be winning free money, basically. And if you want to take advantage of that sweat-free pick with Patrick Mahomes, just go down in the comments and grab the link that's there and use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. When you hit the higher on this sweat-free pick with Mahomes, they will match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Now, dropping down to number 3, I've got Mr. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa right here. Another big back, very similar to the size of Omari Hampton, 6 feet tall, 225 pounds. He's a particularly intriguing prospect to me because he clearly passes the eye test with the size, right? Like 6 foot, 225, absolutely may be exactly what he comes in at when the NFL Combine rolls around. I think what's really most interesting to me about Caleb Johnson is that he has like really effortless speed when you actually watch his film. Like he looks like he was just kind of shot out of a cannon and nobody's expecting what this guy's going to do, because it's like, how is a guy this size able to just zoom past everybody? The guy looks like he was shot out of a cannon. 9 out of the 10 times he has the ball in his hands. He's more of a one-cut runner. He's got tremendous burst though, and he handled almost 250 carries for 6.4 yards per carry in 2024. So that exactly proves my point on this guy, that he's capable of handling the workload along with the size that he has. That makes me feel good about that guy coming into the NFL. My 2 biggest issues with him is that unlike Hampton, he doesn't really use that size to his advantage all the time. Like, there's a lot of times where he'll go down at first contact. I don't like that, especially when you have the size to be able to run like Omari Hampton does. And he doesn't particularly profile particularly well as a pass catcher. Like, I'm kind of out on him as a pass catcher. Maybe it develops. It happens with some guys in the NFL. I didn't see enough from him in college to make me feel really positive about him becoming a better fantasy back than Omari Hampton does at the same size. So that's why I do think that Omari Hampton's just the better overall fantasy back in the future compared to Caleb Johnson, because I just don't see that pass catching upside with Caleb Johnson. But I do still see him being a day 2 pick in a really strong running back class. Now, at number 4, I've got Devon Neil out of Kansas, man. I'll tell you what, Devon Neil is a really interesting pick because I've seen a lot of sites and a lot of people have Devon Neil ranked a lot lower than this. I really like Devon Neil out of Kansas. 5'11", 215 pounds, got pretty solid size, and I do think that there's a lot that I like about him that's very similar to Omari Hampton. There's 2 guys in this class that really stick out to me as patient runners. It's Devon Neil and it's Omari Hampton. Those 2 guys they just kind of stick out to me as more patient, cerebral backs that are just kind of waiting to see what the defense does, and they're kind of setting them up on a chessboard to be able to make the move whichever way they feel is better. That's what Devon Neil does quite a bit, man. He's got plenty of burst when you watch him on the film, and he also has plenty of toughness at that size, and he's also a 3 straight year guy at 1,000 yards rushing. That's a really good number to look at when you're looking at Kansas running backs who have not always been particularly strong. But in that same breath, you also do have to mention the fact that this guy only carried 219 times in 2024. That was the most amount of carries that he had in any particular year. So obviously that makes me wonder, can he handle a big workload? Because that is ultimately a major determining factor as far as how often these guys are going to be fantasy superstars for us on a weekly basis. Can we trust Devon Neil, or is it going to be more of a spotty thing to where maybe sometimes he's a relief back, but sometimes in a 2 running back system is the star of the show? I don't really know. We didn't see enough of it in college, though. That's what I do know. And in addition to being the most carry-heavy season that he had, he was also the most inefficient that he had ever been. 5.8 yards per carry. That was the most inefficient season that he has had since his freshman season. So I do wonder, did he drive himself into the ground with 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons? That is ultimately the issue with him. And he's also going to be 22 years old at the start of the 2025 season. Make of that what you will. I'm not particularly concerned about that, but I understand people who have concerns about that. Make of that what you will. I do think it's worth noting here, but I do really like Devon Neil, and I do think he will be a day 2 pick. Ultimately, he's going to be a major factor in affecting whether or not you believe he can be a good dynasty back. I believe he can be. I like day 2 picks at running back, and I think Devon Neil has the talent for it. Number 5, Mr. Cam Skattebo. I'm so interested to see where everybody else has Cam Skattebo ranked. This guy is a freaking beast. He's a beast. And I've got to tell you this. There's nobody that's raised their stock higher throughout the college football playoff than Cam Scatterboot. That guy has absolutely he's seen his stock just take an absolute lightning leap. Like, it's ridiculous how good he's been in the college playoffs. Obviously, they got eliminated against Texas a couple weeks back, but the guy was still awesome in that particular game. First of all, the guy had a massive workload. Like, aside from Ashton Jinnie, this guy's workload he had in 2024, 338 total touches and a monstrous 2,316 yards from scrimmage. That's absurd. 1,700 yards rushing for 5.8 yards per carry. That is absolutely ridiculous. Now, there's obviously a bunch of different things that you can say about Cam Scatterboot. The one thing that sticks out, of course, when you watch him, is he has unbelievable contact balance. And I think that's another thing to be worth noting here. He's listed at 5'11", 215. I can't tell you the amount of times I've said on this channel and my other channel, Football Fanalysts Network, over the years, listed height and weight by college means nothing. It means nothing. They inflate those numbers all the time. They even did it when I played high school football. They listed a guy who would be 5'9" as 6 feet tall. Colleges do the same freaking thing because they have no incentive, to be honest. Cam Scatterboot is not 5'11". The guy is 5'9" tops. And that's a big reason I think he has great contact balance. The guy really does project similarly to Maurice Jones-Drew. Like, that's my comp for him right now because I just see the running style very similar. He's a better pass catcher than Maurice Jones-Drew, but I don't know exactly what I feel about Cam Scatterboot ultimately until I see his 40 time at the NFL Combine or his pro day. I think that's going to be a big telltale sign of how effective I will be because speed absolutely matters at the running back position. I do kind of feel that way with Cam Scatterboot, like he'll be like a 4.5, maybe 4.6 guy. I don't think he's particularly fast, and I do think that will affect his draft stock. But right now, like, I just think that Cam Scatterboot, if we're drafting today, I think is a great player to add to your team because he's just a baller. Like, the guy is just a baller. Ultimately, we just need to see what that speed comes out to be. I think that's the ultimate determining factor in how good he's going to be in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now, at number 6, also a guy who has absolutely risen up his draft stock throughout the college football playoff, Nicholas Singleton, Penn State. I really like Nick Singleton, man. And I've seen, again, a lot of people split on where to put Nick Singleton in this Dynasty rookie class. I really like the guy. He's 6 feet tall, 227. I do think that's probably remotely close to being accurate, maybe 5'11", but I do think that Nicholas Singleton is going to be a big enough back to theoretically be able to handle a good workload at the NFL level. Now, here's the thing. I do think that obviously one thing that needs to be noted is that he did not handle 200 plus carries any year at Penn State. Like, it's actually crazy to me because every time I watch this guy, I was like, why are they not giving him the ball more? It made no sense to me why he was just sitting there on the sidelines a bunch of the time. He was, though, and it didn't make sense to me. So I do have to kind of wonder to myself, like, can he actually handle it? Even at that size, like, the fact that they didn't give him more and as effective as he was, it does blow my mind a little bit. But the guy is so clearly a playmaker, man. He's got so much burst. He's got so much speed, receiving and running the ball. The guy just makes plays when the ball is in his hands. Now, the one guy that I thought of when I was looking at his production profile specifically, not when I watched him on film, just production profile exclusively, Zach Evans out of Ole Miss a couple years ago. That's who he reminds me of. And that's a very scary thought if you know anything about Zach Evans' trajectory once he got to the NFL. The guy is like, he's like nowhere to be found anymore. He got drafted by the Rams in the 6th round, 2022, and he's been nowhere to be found. So I do worry a little bit about, the production profile here with Nicholas Singleton, but I do think that ultimately he is a better athlete than Zach Evans. I think he showed more than Zach Evans at the college level and in bigger spots than Zach Evans did. So I do ultimately think that Nick Singleton could, again, be a day 2 pick. I think the day 2 of the NFL draft, a lot of running backs will go, and I think Nicholas Singleton will be inside of day 2. And at number 7, to round this video out, because I think this is kind of the point where we start to see guys go after day 2 in the draft, I have Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. Dylan Sampson, I don't know how many people are Samsonites here watching this video right now. I feel like people are going to be pissed when they see Dylan Sampson down here because I've seen people a lot higher on Dylan Sampson than me. First of all, I like the guy. I think this is a very strong running back class. He just comes here at number 7 because I don't like as many things about him as I do about a guy like Nicholas Singleton, who I just talked about. Dylan Sampson, Speedy playmaker, absolutely. Breaks off big plays anytime through the air or on the ground. 5'11", 201 is what he's listed at. That's already a red flag for me. What he makes up for with it, though, is that he had 250 plus carries, so he proved that he can handle a really good workload in the SEC. That's a really important thing to do in that kind of a conference. I do think that this guy is more of a unique fit, though. I think that he would be a good fit in a fast-paced offense at the NFL level. I don't know if he's going to be a good fit anywhere on the NFL team, like on any NFL team. I don't know if he's that particular player. Because again, I don't think that this size for Sampson is accurate. I do think he will come in smaller than his listed size. He's not a power back. Like, for example, I don't think that he'd be a good fit with the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Like, Pittsburgh's probably going to let Najee Harris walk this offseason. I don't think that Dylan Sampson's a good fit there. I think he's probably a better fit on a Miami Dolphins, and they're not looking for a running back. Maybe they are. But I think that my point being, they're better on a fast-paced offense, man. I don't think that he's going to be a good pick if you're looking for a power running back. So that absolutely limits his options a little bit. I think he probably goes back of day 2. But again, we need to see speed with this guy, absolutely. And we need to see exactly what his listed weight and height are at the combine, because I have a feeling it's going to be a lot lower than this. And that's why he's down here at number 7. So let me know what you think of the running backs in this 2025 Dynasty rookie class. And if you want to see the top wide receivers in Dynasty Fantasy Football right now, click on this video right here.